Because that's definitely something that comes across in your interviews. You interview almost like The Rock. You've got this energy, this passion, whereas other people are like, you've got this kind of real showmanship about it. But you initially got into, you used to try and mimic radio DJs as a child.
Yeah.
Do you think the showmanship from the wrestling and the emotion and the storylines, etc., as well as your love for that, was that what promoted the Chris that we see today and insight, why you've been so successful, do you think?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely some area where they kind of bleed over, but you're referencing like me pretending to be a radio DJ when I was 4 years old. I had a Fisher Price tape recorder and I pretended to be the radio DJs that I heard on the radio. And I fell in love with broadcasting at a very young age. And I knew it would be a long shot to try to work in radio or television, but I knew that I at least wanted to give myself that opportunity. And, introduced that love of wrestling when I was 15, 16 years old, that huge passion for wrestling. And I realized that every wrestler, wherever you were on the card, had a certain charisma about them. I mean, whether it was The Rock's over the top, incredible charisma that he had, or someone like The Undertaker had a different kind of charisma, but everybody had this charisma that just leapt through the screen. And I realized that when you're a broadcaster, you're playing a version of yourself. You're still yourself. You're still Chris Van Vliet, but you're playing like an amped up version of yourself. And I think that there's a real marriage there to what wrestlers do. They're playing themselves, but they're playing themselves like turned up to 11. And I realized very quickly in my broadcasting career that as excited as you think you might be, or as charismatic as you think you might be being on camera, the camera like flattens it a lot. And I just knew that like I had to kind of like bring that out of myself every time the red light was on, whether that was on the radio or whether that was on TV.
Because I was recently at the Arnold's Fitness show, and one of the guys speaking was Flex Wheeler, and he's a famous bodybuilder, and he was talking about how he used to be terrified of going up on stage. So he used to have this like egocentric, I'm the best in the world kind of persona, because it was the only thing that made him get up there to show off and to go on the stage. So everybody kind of hated him, but he said if they knew how he really felt, that was it. How did you start finding this persona? Because that was going to be one of my questions is, do you dial up your Chris? It is a louder Chris that we would see in everyday life. But how would you advise people listening who are interested, to find their inner, I want to say inner Chris, but that sounds wrong, our inner persona? How would we find this?
I think it's so important to watch your stuff back. And I think that we live in a time where not even time. The first time you hear yourself, on a voicemail, or the first time you hear a recording of yourself, you go, is that what I really sound like? Oh my gosh, no. And then you see yourself, whether it's on your own iPhone recording or webcam recording, you go, oh, do I really look like that? Do I do that thing with my eyebrows when I talk? And why does this part of my mouth go up and the other part go down?
Every day.
It is so important to get used to, yes, this is how you look. This is how you sound. This is how the rest of the world sees and hears you. So I think it begins with getting comfortable and self-aware of that's who you are. So it starts there. And then it starts from there. I think you go, okay, what can I work on? What can I do to make myself a little bit better? And I think that that's really it. And like maybe tomorrow you try to amp it up a little bit and then watch that. If maybe it was too much, dial it back a little bit. But I think it's that constant process of like tweaking and tuning it to find out what feels most authentic to you. And also understand that energy is contagious. And if you're, greeting people with this big energy and a smile that feels authentic, they're going to reciprocate that back to you. And if you're going to host a podcast or a YouTube channel or a TV show or radio show, and you're just like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm so happy to have you here. And people are, they're going to see right through this and they're not going to be drawn into that.